Fantastic stuff. Next up we have another new contributor. It's Michiel K. from all the way in Holland land. When GoldenEye 007 is being brought up in video game discussion, the typical conversation follows a pattern of fond remembrance from of both the single-player campaign and multiplayer deathmatches, and musings about how it was the first good/great first-person shooter for a console, followed by the conclusion that time has not been kind to it, and the advice not to revisit the game in its original format. And as overall positive the sentiment is around GoldenEye 007, I think it deserves more, far more credit than that. Let's take a trip back to late 1997. Around this time, the first-person shooter that represented the state-of-the-art on PC at the time was the original Quake, as Unreal and Half-Life had not come out yet. id Software's much-hyped follow-up to Doom boasted moody-looking environments and impressive light sourcing, but its character models were decidedly angular and low on polygons, and it was still a maze-type corridor shooter set in more abstract environments that did only really evolve from Doom in terms of greater verticality in its levels. So after Turok Dinosaur Hunter on N64 and PC, which already fared better than Quake in terms of polygon counts for its 3D models, along came GoldenEye 007. More than just being good for console-based FPS, GoldenEye was perhaps the first game in the genre to feature environments with a real-world sense of logic to them, from the dam and its security-locked areas to the facility within, as well as the frigate and many other locations in the game. These weren't the mazes of old with inexplicable raising platforms in place to transport you to higher levels. No, there were actual elevators and fire escapes and offices and connected hallways and trains. Don't forget about the trains. But that was not all. Probably thanks to its original conception as a Virtua Cop-style light gun shooter, Rare introduced another first as they made it so that enemies actually reacted accordingly to where on their bodies you would shoot them, albeit in an often comical manner. Did you ever attempt to shoot a Russian soldier in the bottom the first chance you got when sneaking around in the facility? I did, and had a good laugh, seeing him jump up and reach for his buttocks with both hands. Oh yeah, and you could pop off berets and other headgear. Remember that GoldenEye 007 was also released before Metal Gear Solid, quietly introducing polygonal tactical espionage action as an aside, using a silencer, circumventing CCTV cameras and patrolling guards, preventing soldiers to reach the alarm button was often very beneficial, unless you didn't care to accomplish the mission and fancied a glorious shootout. And then there was the mission design with various goalposts contained within a single level, even expanding when a higher difficulty level was selected. This was another leap from the keycard grabbing and maze running seen in the big PC FPSs before it. The exact structure would survive through Perfect Dark, the Time Splitters games, and ultimately Perfect Dark Zero, but I don't think it's unfair to state that it must have influenced at least other games of the genre with real-world settings after it as well. So you see GoldenEye 007's impact both in terms of its presentation and in terms of its design and play mechanics, and the complete breath of fresh air the game represented was positively huge and often strangely understated. Maybe because much of its earliest fans weren't overly familiar with the PC FPSs of the time and just how sharp the contrast was. Before I got to own the game, pretty much on release, I had been very sceptical about the split-screen deathmatches, as I'd only played competitive FPSs via LAN on PC, and the idea of being able to see your opponent's screen seemed to take too much away from the game for me. But in the end, the slower, considerate play resembling real-life firefights more, combined with the ability to quickly pop around corners and back again, and the rigging of environments with explosives gave its own unique and enjoyable flavour. As for revisiting, I do pop the cartridge in from time to time. The Natalia escort mission on 00 agent level is my bane, and to me the experience is not as unpleasant as it is to many others. The default controls don't bother me as the game has been designed around it. Auto-aim or manual aim with the R button takes care of enemies above and below very well. No need to mess around with the C buttons. And I personally don't demand standardised controls for every game of a genre anyway. The now substandard frame rate is a bit rougher to deal with, but with the right or wrong mindset I can do it. Funnily enough, at the time of the game's release I had noticed it too, but since my PC was chugging along when hordes of imps were chucking fireballs at my Space Marine as well, I more or less accept choppy frame rates when things get busy as part of the genre, sort of how I now accept slowdown in a cave shoot-'em-up. In the end, the Rare FPS with the Bond license certainly deserves a lot more credit than I've seen it getting so far.
Fantastic post.
Thanks, Michiel.